The rain fell like whips on the dirt road, turning the red earth into slippery mud that clung to Clara Hayes's worn boots. She pulled up the hood of her thin jacket, trying to shield her face from the icy water that streamed through her dark hair, but she knew it was useless. She was drenched to the bone. At 24, Clara carried a simple backpack with everything she owned in the world. 2 changes of clothes, a worn notebook where she jotted down medicinal herb recipes inherited from her grandmother, and a feigned courage that had brought her to these rural Nebraska lands in search of work. The storm had arrived without warning, like life's cruelest changes. The March sky, which moments before had stretched blue and promising over Kearney, transformed into a gray curtain that poured down water with fury. The road signs disappeared in the liquid curtain, and Clara realized with growing despair that she had completely lost her way. Where on earth was Martha Albright's boarding house? Her feet slipped in the mud, and she almost fell, clutching a barbed wire fence that scratched her palm. The cut stung, mixing a few drops of blood with the ceaseless rain. "Damn," she muttered, wiping her hand on her soaked jeans. It was then that headlights emerged through the storm, like 2 yellow eyes cutting through the premature darkness of the afternoon. A black pickup truck approached slowly, carefully navigating the slippery road, and stopped right beside her. The window lowered just enough for a deep voice to be heard over the deafening noise of the rain. "Get in, miss. This rain isn't letting up anytime soon." Clara hesitated. All her life she had learned to distrust male generosity, especially when it came from unknown men on deserted roads. But the cold that penetrated to her bones, her injured hand, and the despair of being completely lost spoke louder. She ran to the passenger door and got in, bringing with her the smell of rain and the creak of her wet backpack. "Thank you very much," she said, trembling and soaked, trying not to drip too much water on the leather seat. The man behind the wheel had graying temples, large calloused hands, and brown eyes that observed her without malice, only with the genuine concern of someone who finds another in distress. "Where were you headed?" "To Martha Albright's boarding house in town. I came looking for work." He nodded, turning on the vehicle's heater. "I know Martha. Good woman. A bit strict but fair. But with this storm you won't get there today. The roads will be impassable for a few hours." Clara's heart pounded. She had no money for a hotel. She knew no one in the area, and the thought of spending the night outdoors terrified her. "I'm Grant Montgomery," the man said, extending his right hand while steering with his left. "I have a farm nearby. You can take shelter until the rain passes, and tomorrow morning I'll take you to the boarding house. No strings attached." The sincerity in his voice, the way he said, "no strings attached," looking at the road, without insinuation, convinced Clara she could trust him, at least for one night. "Clara Hayes," she replied, shaking his calloused hand. "And thank you truly." The house emerged from among the trees like a refuge, an old solid construction with wide verandas and wooden windows that embraced those who arrived. Grant parked near the entrance and ran to open her door, shielding her from the rain. "Come inside, you're drenched." Inside the house, the warmth of the wood-burning stove enveloped Clara like a maternal embrace. The kitchen was spacious with cast-iron pots hanging, a large wooden table in the center, and the constant smell of fresh coffee mixed with the aroma of burning wood. "I'll get you some dry clothes," Grant said. "Make yourself at home." When he returned with a towel and a plaid shirt, Clara had already noticed that there were no family photos on the kitchen walls. Only a few black and white images of ancestors and colored photographs of extensive plantations. After she changed, she found the table set and a steaming hearty beef and vegetable stew served in earthenware bowls. "Beef and vegetable stew," Grant explained. "I'm not a great cook, but it'll fill you up." They ate in silence for a few minutes, only the sound of the rain and the crackle of the fire. It was then that the sense of security in that cozy kitchen made words escape Clara's mouth, words she had never said to anyone. "I'm not a virgin anymore. I have a past." Grant placed his spoon beside the bowl and looked her in the eyes for the first time since she had spoken. "I never asked you to be," he said, with a simplicity that made something in Clara's chest unravel like a knot finally untied. Outside, the storm continued, but inside that kitchen, Clara felt that perhaps she had found a place where she wouldn't have to carry her past as a burden. The dawn brought a clear sky and the sound of birds that Clara hadn't heard in years. She woke up in the guest room Grant had prepared, a simple bed, but with clean-smelling sheets and a patchwork quilt that seemed to tell stories of past generations. The smell of fresh coffee and homemade bread guided her to the kitchen, where she found Grant preparing breakfast with the same naturalness as the night before. "Sleep well?" he asked, serving coffee in a white porcelain cup. "Better than in months," Clara admitted, surprised by her own sincerity. "It's been a while since I felt safe." Grant nodded, as if he understood exactly what she meant. He didn't ask questions about her past, didn't show invasive curiosity. He just pushed a basket of warm rolls towards her. "Eat something before we go. Martha Albright is demanding, but if you show you're willing to work, she'll give you a chance." During the drive to town, Clara observed the landscape revealed by daylight. Vast fields of still green soybeans, cattle scattered in pastures that stretched to the horizon, simple houses dotted among the crops. It was a world different from the urban hustle she knew, a place where time seemed to pass more gently. "How long have you lived here?" she asked. "I was born on this farm," Grant replied, keeping his eyes on the road. "My father, my grandfather, it's always been our land. I've thought about leaving a few times, but I never could. I guess it holds me as much as I hold it." There was a gentle melancholy in those words that Clara couldn't interpret, but which touched something inside her. Martha Albright's boarding house was on a busy corner in downtown Kearney, a two-story building with a well-maintained facade and always clean windows. Martha Albright appeared at the door even before they parked, a 60-year-old woman, gray hair pulled back in a rigid bun, immaculate apron, and eyes that seemed to see through people. "Grant Montgomery," she said, descending the entrance steps. "Haven't seen you in months." "Martha Albright." Grant respectfully removed his hat. "I brought Clara. She's looking for work." Martha Albright's dark brown eyes scanned Clara from head to toe, noting her simple but clean clothes, her upright posture despite her nervousness, her hands that didn't tremble even under scrutiny. "Where are you from, girl?" "From rural Ohio, ma'am. I came looking for a new life." "Running from what?" The question was direct like a punch, but Clara didn't flinch. "From choices I made and can no longer undo. But I didn't run from responsibilities or debts. I came to work honestly." Martha Albright exchanged a brief glance with Grant, who remained silent, but nodded almost imperceptibly. "The work here is hard," she said. "Cleaning, cooking, guest services. I'm up at 5 a.m. I don't sleep until after 10 p.m. Payment at the end of the month, room and board included. Accept?" "I accept, ma'am." "Then let's see if you last longer than the others." Grant said goodbye with a formal handshake, but his eyes said something more when they met Clara's. "If you need anything." He left the sentence hanging. "Thank you. For everything." The first days at the boarding house were a test of endurance. Martha Albright hadn't lied about the strictness of the work. At 5 a.m., Clara was already in the kitchen preparing coffee for 15 guests. At 6, she served breakfast. At 7, she began cleaning the rooms. Lunch, more cleaning, dinner, organization for the next day. But Clara didn't complain once. She worked in silence, always willing, always attentive to details. When one of the guests commented that he had never eaten such a well-served breakfast, Martha Albright hid a half smile. At the end of the first week, while Clara was washing dinner dishes, the boarding house owner approached. "You're not like the other girls who pass through here," she said, drying a pot. "They come looking for an easy life, a rich husband, a quick way out. You actually work. Work is all I know how to do, Martha Albright. And you work well. But there's one thing I want to know." Clara stopped washing dishes and looked at the older woman. "Why did Grant bring you here? He's not a man to meddle in other people's lives. He found me lost in the storm. He gave me shelter for one night, nothing more." Martha Albright studied Clara's face for a few seconds. "Be careful, girl. Grant Montgomery is a good man, but he carries sorrows you can't even imagine. And a sad man sometimes looks for salvation where he shouldn't." The words echoed in Clara's mind long after Martha Albright went up to her quarters. What sorrows could these be? And why did she feel that somehow her life had already intertwined with that man of gentle eyes who had pulled her from the storm? The following Sunday, when the boarding house traffic slowed, Clara made a decision that would change everything. She decided to make a cornmeal cake from her grandmother's recipe and take it to Grant as a thank you. Sunday dawned with that pleasant laziness that only country Sundays know how to have. At the boarding house, only 3 guests had stayed for the weekend, and Martha Albright had given Clara permission to use the kitchen for her experiments, as she said, with a mixture of curiosity and approval. Clara separated the ingredients on the kitchen's marble counter: yellow cornmeal, fresh eggs she herself had fetched from the chicken coop out back, still warm milk, and granulated sugar. The recipe was stored in her memory, passed from grandmother to mother and from mother to her, one of the few inheritances she carried without a heavy heart. As she sifted the cornmeal, her hands worked automatically, but her mind flew to Grant's gentle eyes, to the way he had said, "I never asked you to be," without a trace of judgment. In 1 week at the boarding house, she had thought of him more times than she cared to admit. "Smells good in here," Martha Albright said, appearing at the kitchen door in her floral Sunday apron. "My grandmother's cornmeal cake. I thought I'd take it to Mr. Montgomery as a thank you." Martha Albright raised an eyebrow, but didn't comment. She approached the stove where Clara was stirring the batter with precise circular motions. "Your grandmother taught you well. That one's going to be golden like the sun. She used to say that food made with gratitude always tastes better." "Wise woman, your grandmother." Martha Albright paused. "And you think you're going to walk all the way to Grant's farm? It's not too far, is it?" "About 5 miles. A good walk for someone with fresh legs and determination." Clara smiled. She had walked much greater distances in her life. The cake was ready in the middle of the afternoon, golden and fragrant as Martha Albright had predicted. Clara wrapped it in a clean dish towel, placed it in a borrowed wicker basket, and set off. The road to the farm was the same one she had arrived on a week before, only now under clear sun and without the curtain of rain that had limited her vision. She could see the immensity of Grant's land, acres upon acres of crops organized with the precision of someone who had worked the land for generations. When she arrived at the house, she found Grant on the veranda, sitting in a rocking chair, reading an old newspaper. He looked up and smiled, not the polite smile he had given at the boarding house, but something warmer. "Clara, what a pleasant surprise. I brought you something," she said, climbing the veranda steps and extending the basket. "Cornmeal cake, my grandmother's recipe." Grant received the basket as if it were a priceless gift. "You didn't have to, but thank you. It's been a long time since anyone baked a cake here at home." "It's been a long time since anyone baked?" He hesitated for a moment, as if deciding how much to reveal. "My mother used to. She passed away 3 years ago. Since then, well, I've learned to manage on my own." There was a loneliness in those words that Clara recognized immediately. It was the same emptiness she carried, only he had lost loved ones, while she had lost herself. "I'm sorry. I didn't know." "It's okay." Grant stood up. "How about we try this cake with some coffee, if you have time, of course." Clara looked at the sun beginning to set on the horizon. "I do." In the kitchen, while Grant prepared coffee on the wood-burning stove, Clara noticed details she had missed on the first night. Well-maintained pots with signs of solitary use, a table too large for one person, chairs that seemed to wait for a family that never materialized. "Have you always lived here alone?" she asked, cutting the cake into generous slices. "Not always. My brother Warren grew up here too, but he left at 18, said he wanted to see the world, make a fortune in the big city." Grant served coffee in 2 cups. "Sometimes I wonder if I wasn't foolish to stay." "Why foolish?" "For being so attached to a place, for choosing the land instead of other things." They ate in silence, the cake disappearing amidst small compliments and shy smiles. As the sun began to set, painting the sky orange and pink, Clara knew she needed to return. "Can I give you a ride?" Grant offered. "Thank you, but I like to walk. It helps me think." "What do you think about?" The question caught her off guard. Clara hesitated, then decided on honesty. "How strange it is to feel at home in a place I arrived at a week ago." Grant accompanied her to the veranda, where the afternoon air carried the smell of good earth and the promise of a starry night. "Sometimes you recognize home when you find it," he said, and there was something in his voice that made Clara's heart quicken. During the walk back, she carried that phrase like a precious secret, and for the first time in years she allowed herself to imagine that perhaps a different future than she had planned could exist. What she didn't know was that Grant was thinking exactly the same thing. The following Sundays became a silent tradition. Clara arrived at the farm in the middle of the afternoon, always bringing something. Sometimes a cake, sometimes homemade bread, sometimes just freshly brewed coffee to accompany the conversations that flowed like calm water. Grant waited for her on the veranda, as if he knew exactly when she would appear on the dirt road. They began by walking around the property, him showing her the pastures, her asking questions about the cattle and the crops. "How many head do you have?" Clara asked, watching the Angus cattle graze peacefully under the shade trees. "About 350, mostly Angus." Grant opened the gate for them to enter the pasture. "My grandfather started with 5 cows and a dream. And you? What's your dream?" The question caught him off guard. Grant stopped walking and looked at the horizon where the sun was beginning to set. "I guess I never stopped to think. It's always been about maintaining what he built. But what about you? What do you want?" He looked at her sideways, a half smile playing on his lips. "You're getting philosophical, Clara Hayes." She laughed, and the sound echoed across the open fields like music. As the weeks passed, Grant began to teach her about farm work. He showed her how to recognize when a cow was about to calve, explained the different types of feed, taught her to identify weeds in the garden. "Your hands are good for this," he said, watching Clara pull out invasive weeds with precision. "Delicate but firm. My grandmother used to say that hands that care for plants also care for people." Was she really a folk healer? She was. She knew every herb, every tea, every traditional remedy. Clara wiped the dirt from her fingers. "She died trying to teach me everything, but I was more interested in running off to the city. And now? Now I think I should have paid more attention." It was on one of those afternoons that Grant showed her the back of the property, where a small, somewhat abandoned medicinal herb garden grew. "My mother planted this. After she died, I didn't know how to take proper care of it." Clara walked between the rows, recognizing some plants. Boldo, lemon balm, guaco, arnica. "Can I help you restore it?" she offered, "if you'd like." "You would do that?" "It would be an honor." From that Sunday on, the garden became their joint project. Clara brought seedlings she got in town. Grant provided fertilizer and manual labor. They talked while they planted, and words flowed between them with the same naturalness as the earth passing through their fingers. "Why did you really come here?" Grant asked one afternoon, as they watered the new plants. Clara took a moment to answer, organizing her thoughts. "Because in the city I had lost myself. I made choices that made me lose respect for myself. And here I remember who I was before I got lost." Grant nodded as if he understood perfectly. "Sometimes you have to come home to find yourself again. But I never lived here. Home isn't always a place, Clara. Sometimes it's a feeling." They worked in silence after that, but there was a new understanding between them, an intimacy that didn't need words. At the boarding house, Martha Albright observed the changes in Clara with attentive eyes. The young woman returned from Sundays at the farm with a different sparkle in her eyes, lighter, more present. "You're getting attached," she said on a Monday, as they prepared breakfast together. "To what?" "You know very well to what." Martha Albright beat the eggs with unnecessary vigor. "Grant is a good man, but he has his complications." "What complications?" "Losses that haven't healed yet. Responsibilities that weigh on his shoulders." The older woman looked directly at Clara. "And are you sure you're ready for that?" Clara didn't know how to answer. She only knew that Sundays at the farm had become the part of the week she looked forward to the most, and that Grant sometimes looked at her as if she were the answer to a question he didn't know how to formulate. What neither of them knew was that Grant was also asking himself the same question every night before falling asleep in the house too big for one man. It was on a rainy Tuesday in April that Grant appeared at the boarding house with a worried face and his hat dripping water. Martha Albright received him in the living room, immediately noticing his restlessness. "Grant, what happened?" "I need to talk to Clara. It's urgent." Clara came down the stairs, still in her cleaning apron, and felt her heart clench at his expression. "What's wrong?" "The cattle are sick. A strange fever started yesterday morning. I've already lost 3 head and another 15 are doing poorly." He took off his hat, running his hand through his hair. "The vet can't come until tomorrow afternoon. And how can I help?" "You said your grandmother was a folk healer, that she knew medicinal plants. I know it's not the same thing, but..." His voice faltered for a moment. "I'm desperate, Clara. She looked at Martha Albright, who nodded with a brief gesture. Go. I'll take care of things here. The journey to the farm was tense. Grant drove in silence, his hands clasped on the steering wheel, while Clara tried to recall everything her grandmother had taught her about healing plants for animals. What are the exact symptoms? She asked. High fever, labored breathing, loss of appetite. Some have discharge from their eyes. Clara closed her eyes, remembering her grandmother's voice. Every illness has its herb, granddaughter. You just have to know how to listen to what nature teaches. They arrived at the farm under a light rain. In the corral, the scene was desolate. Clearly debilitated animals, some lying down, others standing but visibly weak. Grant had reason to be desperate. That herd represented years of work. Let me see, Clara said, calmly entering the corral. She approached the sick animals, observing the symptoms, carefully touching their feverish heads. In her memory, her grandmother's words about respiratory infections in animals echoed. I need the medicinal garden and a large pot to make tea. Tea? Trust me. They rushed to the garden out back. Clara picked guaco leaves, eucalyptus, and some herbs Grant didn't recognize. Her hands worked with confidence as if ancestral wisdom had awakened. In the kitchen, she prepared a strong infusion, mixing the herbs in proportions that seemed to come from instinct. My grandmother used this for pneumonia in people. I adapted the quantities for the cattle, she explained, stirring the steaming liquid. We'll give this mixed in with wet feed. Grant watched her work, impressed by the transformation. The timid Clara of Sundays had given way to a confident woman who knew exactly what to do. Where did you learn all this? By observing. My grandmother always said that plants speak. We just need to know how to listen. They spent the entire afternoon treating the animals. Clara prepared the infusions. Grant helped administer them to the most debilitated animals. It was hard work, but she didn't complain once. That night, when they finally stopped to rest, they were exhausted but hopeful. Some animals already seemed better. Clara, Grant said, sitting beside her on the veranda. I don't know how to thank you. We don't know if it will work yet. It already has. He looked at her with new intensity. You saved my farm. I just did what my grandmother taught me. No, you did much more than that. There was something different in the air between them, a closeness that surpassed gratitude. Clara felt it when he took her hand, calloused now from the work in the garden and the corral. Stay for dinner? He asked. It's too late for you to go back alone. She nodded, knowing it wasn't just about the time. They ate in silence, the good exhaustion of those who had fought together for something important. When Grant offered the guest room again, Clara accepted without hesitation. Thank you, he said at the bedroom door. For everything. Thank you, she replied. For trusting me. That night, lying in the simple but welcoming bed, Clara understood that something had changed between them. It was no longer just gratitude or attraction. It was partnership, it was trust. It was the feeling that together they could face any storm. From the next room, Grant was thinking exactly the same thing. When the veterinarian arrived the following afternoon, he found a visibly recovered herd. Dr. Miller, an experienced man who had served the region for decades, examined the animals with growing surprise. Grant, what did you do? He asked, checking the temperature of a cow that had been almost beyond hope the day before. This recovery is almost miraculous. Clara prepared some medicinal teas, Grant explained, looking at her with thinly veiled pride. The veterinarian turned to Clara with renewed interest. What herbs did you use? Guaco, eucalyptus, some others my grandmother taught me. Clara blushed slightly with the attention. Nothing too elaborate. Elaborate enough to save this herd. Dr. Miller closed his bag. You have a gift, young lady. Have you ever thought about studying veterinary medicine? Clara laughed, shaking her head. I don't have enough education for that. When the veterinarian left, Grant and Clara walked to the garden in silence. The previous day's rain had left the earth fragrant, and the plants seemed more vibrant than ever. You could live here, Grant said suddenly, stopping beside the herb beds. What do you mean? On the farm. With me. He turned to face her. You have a knack for this, Clara. For the land, for the animals, for this life. Her heart raced. For weeks she had imagined this possibility, but hearing it verbalized was different. Grant, I know it's crazy. You've known me for little over a month." He ran his hand through his hair, nervous. "But I can't stop thinking that you came here for a reason. I came because I got lost in the storm." "No." He took a step towards her. "You came because you were meant to be here. With me." Clara looked around. The garden she had helped restore, the welcoming house in the background, the pastures where they had worked together. Everything seemed to fit perfectly, like puzzle pieces finally finding their places. "What about the boarding house? Martha Albright?" "She'll understand." Grant smiled. "I think she was already expecting this." "How can you be so sure?" "Because she told me yesterday when I went to pick you up. She said you were losing the sparkle of someone who has somewhere to go." Clara felt her eyes well up. It was true. As much as she liked the work at the boarding house, as much as she respected Martha Albright, she felt it was temporary. The farm, on the other hand, felt permanent. What if it doesn't work out? What if it does? The simplicity of the question disarmed her. Grant was right. What if it did work out? "I need to think." "Of course." He held her hands, calloused now from their shared work. "But while you think, know that you will always have a place here. Not as an employee or a guest, as part of the family." The word family echoed in Clara's heart. How long had it been since she felt part of something like that? That night at the boarding house, she told Martha Albright everything. The older woman listened in silence, only nodding occasionally. "And what do you want to do?" she asked when Clara finished. "I don't know. I'm scared." "Of what?" "Of being disappointed again. Of choosing wrong again." Martha Albright approached and held Clara's face in her hands. "Girl, all of life is about choices. Some you get right, some you don't. But staying still for fear of choosing is the real mistake. What if I hurt him? What if he makes you happy?" Clara spent the following week torn between the boarding house routine and the thoughts that wouldn't stop swirling. She watched other guests leave, arrive, pass through her life without a trace, and wondered if she wasn't missing the chance to build something lasting. On Sunday, when she arrived at the farm, she found Grant planting new seedlings in the garden. "I thought you wouldn't come anymore," he said without stopping work. "Why?" "Because I made a proposal that might have scared you." Clara knelt beside him and picked up a seedling. "Where do I plant this one?" "There, next to the mint." He watched her dig the hole in the earth. "Did you think about what we talked about?" "I did." She carefully placed the seedling in the hole. "And I want to accept, but with one condition." Grant stopped planting and looked at her directly. "What is it?" "I want it to be for love, Grant. Not for gratitude, not for convenience, for love." He smiled, and in that smile there was a tenderness she had never seen before. "Then you'll be here for a very long time, Clara Hayes. Because for love is exactly what I was offering." Clara's move to the farm happened on a sunny May morning. All her possessions fit into a small suitcase and 2 cloth bags, an entire life reduced to the essentials. Martha Albright helped carry her things to Grant's pickup truck, her damp eyes betraying the emotion she tried to hide. "You'll always have a place here if you need it," she said, hugging Clara with maternal strength. "Thank you for everything, Martha Albright, for giving me a chance when I needed it most. And thank you for reminding me that sometimes it's worth trusting people." Grant watched the farewell respectfully, hat in hand. When they finally left, Clara looked through the back window until the boarding house disappeared around the bend in the road. "Regretting it?" Grant asked. "Nervous," she admitted, "but not regretting it." At the farm, Grant showed her the room that would be hers, the same guest room where she had slept before, but now with fresh flowers on the bedside table and new curtains at the windows. "I thought we could fix it up better over time," he said, a little awkwardly. "If you want to change anything, it's perfect as it is." In the first few days, they established a natural routine. Clara woke early to help with the milking, then cared for the medicinal garden while Grant checked the pastures. They had lunch together in the kitchen, talking about plans for the crops or about books she had found in the small library of the house. "Did your father read a lot?" she asked one afternoon, leafing through a volume of poetry. "My mother. She was a teacher before she got married." Grant smiled melancholically. "She used to say that a house without books is like a body without a soul." She was right. Their cohabitation proved surprisingly easy. Grant was respectful, maintaining appropriate distance but being attentive. Clara felt safe, protected but not suffocated. It was on a Thursday that he showed her a project kept in his office drawer. "What's this?" Clara asked, looking at the yellowed architectural plans. "House expansion." Grant unfolded the papers on the table. "My father had this drawn up when he thought about having more children. It never left the paper." The drawings showed a larger house with more rooms, a spacious living room, an expanded veranda. Clara traced the lines with her finger, imagining what it would be like. "It's beautiful. Space for two, if you want to stay," he said, echoing the phrase he had spoken weeks earlier. Clara didn't answer immediately. The proposal was there, implicit but clear. It wasn't just about living together, it was about building a life, a future. "Grant, you don't have to answer now," he said, gathering the papers. "I just wanted you to know that I'm thinking about us, about something permanent." That night, Clara lay looking at the ceiling, thinking about the word permanent. For months, permanence had scared her. Now it began to sound like a promise. The answer came unexpectedly on a Saturday morning. Clara was in the garden when she saw Grant talking to a younger man on the veranda. There was something familiar about that visitor. "Clara," Grant called as she approached. "This is my brother, Warren." Warren Montgomery had the same brown eyes as his brother, but an easier smile and clothes that betrayed urban life. He extended his hand to Clara with rehearsed charm. "So you're the famous Clara who saved my brother's herd." "I just helped a little," she replied, noticing the tension in Grant's shoulders. "How modest. Grant told me everything." Warren smiled broadly. "And also that you two are, how can I say, building something together." "Warren came to visit after a long time," Grant said, his voice carefully neutral. 3 years to be exact. Warren clapped his brother on the shoulder. "But now I'm back to stay. I have some interesting proposals to discuss, big brother." Clara felt a change in the air, like when clouds gather before a storm. There was something about Warren's presence that disturbed the balance she and Grant had found. "What kind of proposals?" Grant asked. "Businesses, partnerships, modernizing the farm." Warren gestured animatedly. "Agribusiness has changed a lot in recent years, Grant. There are opportunities you can't even imagine. The farm is doing well as it is." "It's doing well, but it could do better. Much better." Clara watched the conversation in silence, noting how Grant shut down as Warren spoke. It was like seeing two different versions of the same family, one attached to tradition, the other seduced by change. "Well," Warren said, checking his watch, "I'll settle in town for now, but I plan to spend a lot of time here. After all, this farm is my inheritance too." After Warren left, Grant remained silent on the veranda, looking at the horizon. "Is everything okay?" Clara asked. "Warren has always been like this. He shows up now and then with wild ideas, then disappears again. And this time seems different." Grant sighed. "It seems he's here to stay." Clara felt a worry grow in her chest. The peace they had built together seemed more fragile now that Warren had entered the scene. But one thing was clear. No matter what storms came, she would stay by Grant's side to face them. 2 weeks after Warren's visit, Grant asked Clara to marry him. It wasn't an elaborate proposal. They were in the garden, picking tomatoes for lunch, when he stopped and simply said, "Marry me, Clara." She looked at him, dirt on her hands, sun on her face. "Is that a question?" "It's a necessity." The answer came as a smile that lit up her entire face. "Yes." The wedding happened 3 weeks later, in the small-town chapel. Clara sewed her own dress. Simple white fabric, straight cut, nothing extravagant. Grant appeared in a new hat and clean shirt, nervous as a teenager. Martha Albright was in the first row, a tissue in her hand. Warren arrived late, making a noisy entrance during the vows. "Do you take Grant to be your husband?" the priest asked. "I do," Clara said, firm. "Do you take Clara to be your wife?" "I do," Grant replied, his voice choked up. The kiss was soft, chaste, but loaded with promises. The party was at the farm. Improvised tables in the yard, abundant food prepared by the neighbors, an accordion playing late into the night. Warren drank too much and made speeches about new times that no one asked to hear. "My brother found a gem," he said, an arm around Clara's shoulder. I hope he knows how to take good care of her. I do, Grant replied, gently moving Warren away. On their honeymoon, 3 days at a lodge near Niagara Falls, they walked the trails, saw the waterfalls, talked about the children they wanted to have. How many? Grant asked. 2. A calm boy like you, a curious girl like me. What if it's the other way around? Then we'll have surprises. They returned truly married, not just on paper. Intimacy came naturally without haste, built day after day in respectful cohabitation. Their married life flourished like the garden they cared for together. Clara officially took over the house. Grant expanded the livestock. They worked in perfect partnership. The children arrived as they had dreamed. First Caleb, a tranquil boy who slept well and smiled easily. Then Hazel, a curious girl who wanted to touch everything. Just like her mother, Grant would say, watching Hazel investigate the kitchen jars. Caleb is your spitting image, Clara would reply, watching their son play quietly in the yard. Warren appeared frequently, always with new ideas to modernize the farm. Grant listened politely, but never accepted the proposals. You're losing money, big brother, Warren insisted. I'm gaining peace, Grant would reply. Clara watched these conversations with growing concern. Warren didn't give up easily, and his constant presence was beginning to bother her. He wants something, she said one night, after Warren left. He always has, since childhood. And now? Now we have children to protect, Grant said, pulling her closer. And that changes everything. But Warren was also changing. He stayed longer at the farm, complimented Clara's work too much, played too much with the children. There was something calculated in his gentleness that kept her alert. One afternoon, while Grant was in the distant pastures, Warren appeared in the kitchen. Clara, I need to talk to you. About what? About this family's future. She stopped chopping vegetables and faced him. What future? Grant is stubborn, attached to the past, but you're smart. You see opportunities. I don't know what you're talking about. I'm talking about real prosperity. This farm is worth millions, but it could be worth much more. Warren, you have influence over him. You could help me convince him. Convince him of what? To accept outside investments. Partnerships that would multiply profits. Clara placed the knife on the cutting board and turned fully to him. This conversation is over. Think about your children's future, Clara. I am. That's precisely why I won't help you. Warren left without another word, but he left an unverbalized threat in the air that made Clara tremble. The letter arrived on a September morning, delivered by mail with the official seal of a Chicago company. Clara opened it in the kitchen, while Caleb played on the floor and Hazel slept in her crib. Dear Mrs. Montgomery, I've heard through references that you possess exceptional sewing skills. I would like to invite you to visit our atelier in Chicago. It was signed Vivian Vance, fashion entrepreneur. What is it? Grant asked, entering with mud-stained boots. A job offer. In Chicago. He stopped in the middle of the kitchen, his expression changing. What kind of job? A seamstress at a fashion atelier. Clara folded the letter. Vivian Vance saw some pieces I made for the town fair. And what did you say? I haven't answered anything yet. Grant nodded, but she noticed the tension in his shoulders. For the next few days, the letter remained in the kitchen drawer, but its presence was felt like a silent ghost. Clara found herself thinking about the offer while doing housework, imagining what it would be like to work in a big city, to gain professional recognition. You want to go, Grant said one night bluntly. I didn't say that. You don't have to. I see it in your eyes. Clara sighed, putting Caleb in his crib. Sometimes I wonder what it would be like to have a job just for me, to be recognized for what I do. And here you're not. Here I'm your wife, mother of your children. There I would be Clara. You've always been Clara to me. The conversation died there, but it left something suspended in the air. Warren appeared the next day, as if he had sensed the tension. I hear you got an interesting offer, he said, sitting at the kitchen table. How did you know? Clara asked. The country is small. News travels fast. He smiled. Vivian Vance is a big name in Nebraska fashion. So what? So you should seriously consider it. Opportunities like that don't come along every day. Warren, Grant's voice came from the door. What are you doing here? Talking to my sister-in-law about her future. Her future is here. Is it? Warren stood up. What if she wants something different? I can speak for myself, she said, annoyed with both of them. That night, alone in the kitchen after everyone was asleep, Clara wrote a response letter. But she couldn't decide what to say. She wrote 3 versions, one accepting, one declining, one asking for more time. She kept them all in the drawer without sending any. Indecision gnawed at her. During the day, taking care of the house and the children, she felt complete. But at night, when silence fell, the voice of ambition whispered about unfulfilled dreams. Mom always wanted to be a teacher, Grant said one afternoon out of the blue. What do you mean? Before she married my father, she wanted to teach, have her own career. He looked at the horizon. I don't think she ever regretted it, but sometimes I wonder if she didn't miss it. Why are you telling me this? Because I don't want you to feel the same way 20 years from now. His words caught her off guard. There was a generosity in his speech that touched her deeply. What if I go and it doesn't work out? Then you come back. This house will always be yours. What if I go and it does work out? Grant took a moment to answer. Then I'll have to learn to be happy with your happiness. That night, Clara wrote a 4th letter. This time she knew exactly what to say. But before sending it, she put it away in a book on the shelf. She wanted to be absolutely sure before making a decision that would change everything. What she didn't know was that Grant had seen where she hid the letter. And one sleepless night, he read it in silence, discovering a truth that broke his heart in 2. Grant read the letter 3 times before he could fully process the words written in Clara's hand. Dearest Grant, when you read this, I will already have left for Chicago. I know it's cowardly to leave like this, but I couldn't look you in the eyes and tell you I'm leaving. You gave me everything: love, family, security. But I need to discover who I am beyond your wife and the mother of your children. Forgive me for not being strong enough to stay. His hands trembled holding the paper. The date in the upper corner was from that very week. Clara was planning to leave, and he hadn't realized. Or perhaps he had realized and chosen to ignore the signs. He returned to bed in silence, placed the letter exactly where he had found it, and pretended to sleep when Clara lay down beside him. Over the next few days, Grant changed. He started bringing wildflowers from the fields, helped more with the children, looked at Clara as if he wanted to memorize every detail of her face. Is everything okay? She asked one morning, noticing how he watched her while she prepared coffee. I'm just grateful, he replied, for everything we have. Clara felt something strange in those words, but couldn't identify what it was. Grant started complimenting her sewing more, suggested she sell more pieces at the fair, even mentioned a new machine he'd seen in town. So you can work better, he explained. You don't have to, Grant. But I want to. I want you to be happy. The word happy echoed strangely between them, as if it were a question disguised as an affirmation. One Saturday afternoon, while Clara was sewing on the veranda and the children were playing in the yard, Grant sat beside her. Clara, can I ask you something? Of course. Are you happy here? With me? The question caught her off guard. She stopped sewing and looked at him. Why are you asking that? Because sometimes I'm afraid I've been selfish, of having brought you into a life you didn't truly choose. I chose to stay, Grant. Did you choose? Or did you have no option? Clara abruptly put her sewing in her lap, disturbed by the intensity of the conversation. What are you getting at? Nowhere. I just want to be sure you're here because you want to be, not because you feel obligated. I never felt obligated. And what if you had a chance to follow your dreams, your true dreams? Clara's heart pounded. It was as if he knew about the letter, but that was impossible. What dreams? The ones you had before you met me. The ones you still have, but don't talk about. Clara stood up abruptly. Grant, you're scaring me. Why all these questions? He also stood up, took her hands in his. Because I love you. And someone who truly loves wants the person's happiness, even if that happiness doesn't include them. Tears came without warning. Clara cried there on the veranda, holding her husband's calloused hands, feeling the weight of a decision she hadn't officially made yet. I don't know what I want, she whispered. I do, he said, wiping her tears. And it's okay. You can take all the time you need to find out. And what if I find out I want to leave? Then I'll help you pack. The generosity in those words broke Clara's heart. How could he be so good? How could he love her enough to let her go? "I don't deserve you," she said. "You deserve so much more than me." That night, Clara took the letter from the book. She reread every word, every comma, and she realized that she could no longer leave in secret. If she were to leave, it would have to be with honesty. But first, she needed to be absolutely sure of what she wanted. And for that, she needed time that Grant, with his infinite kindness, was willing to give. The news arrived on a rainy October morning. Martha Albright had fainted at the boarding house and been taken to the hospital. The neighbor who brought the message was distressed. "Doctor said it was her heart. She's asking for you, Clara." Grant didn't hesitate. "Let's go." "The children will stay with Brenda," he said, referring to the housekeeper who helped them twice a week. At the hospital, they found Martha Albright small in the white bed, but with her eyes still steady. She smiled when she saw Clara. "I thought you wouldn't come." "How could I not?" Clara held her hand. "Your family." "Family?" Martha Albright repeated the word as if tasting its flavor. "It's been a long time since anyone called me that." The doctor explained that it wasn't serious, but she would need rest and care. The boarding house would have to close temporarily. "I can't close," Martha Albright protested. "I have commitments, guests who depend on me." "You need to take care of yourself," Clara said. "And who will take care of the boarding house?" Clara looked at Grant. He nodded without needing to hear the question. "I will," she said, "until you recover." "I can't ask that." "You're not asking. I'm offering." Over the next few weeks, Clara divided her time between the farm and the boarding house. She woke at 5 to care for the children and the house, then went to town to care for Martha Albright's guests. Grant took on more responsibilities with Caleb and Hazel, hired extra help for the farm. Warren appeared frequently, offering help that always came with ulterior motives. "You're killing yourself," he said one afternoon, finding Clara exhausted in the boarding house kitchen. "The farm, the children, now this place." "I'm fine." "No, you're not. And you know why? Because you're living other people's lives instead of your own." "Warren, please. Is the Chicago offer still on the table?" he asked directly. Clara stopped stirring the pot. "Why do you want me to leave so badly?" "Because you deserve more than this." He gestured around. "You have talent, Clara. You're wasting it on a small life." "This is my life. It's the life chosen for you." Big difference. Warren's words echoed in Clara's mind for the rest of the afternoon. When she visited Martha Albright at the hospital, she found her stronger, sitting in a chair beside the bed. "How's the boarding house?" "Running." "But tell me something, Martha Albright. Did you always want to run a boarding house?" The question caught the older woman off guard. "Why?" "Curiosity. You seem so capable. I imagine you could have done anything." Martha Albright was silent for a moment. "I married at 20. My husband died at 25. The boarding house was what I knew how to do to survive." She looked out the window. "I never thought of other paths." "And do you regret it?" "Regret what?" "Having an honest life? Supporting myself? Not having explored other possibilities?" Martha Albright turned to face her directly. "Clara, why are you asking me this?" "Because I'm confused about my own choices." "Ah," the older woman nodded. "The Chicago offer. You know, I do. And I also know you're torn." "I am. Can I tell you a secret?" Martha Albright lowered her voice. "For years I was hard on the girls who came through the boarding house because I was envious. They had the courage to pursue their dreams, and I never did." "Martha Albright, you intimidate me, Clara, from the first day, because you have a strength I never had." "What strength?" "I'm more lost than ever. The strength to truly love and still question if you're on the right path. The strength not to settle just because it's easier." Clara felt her eyes well up. "And what do I do with this strength?" "Use it. To make the decision that will make you look in the mirror 20 years from now without regret." On the way home, Clara drove in silence. Martha Albright's words echoed in her mind, mixed with Warren's and Grant's. When she arrived at the farm, she found Grant on the veranda, waiting with Caleb in his lap and Hazel playing at his feet. The scene was so perfect it hurt. How to choose between love and dreams when both seemed equally important. Warren chose the morning Grant was in the distant pastures to make his final move. He arrived at the farm when Clara was alone with the children, determined and different from usual. "Clara, I need to tell you the truth about why I came back." "What truth?" "I lost everything in Ohio. Bad investments, bad deals." He sat at the kitchen table, suddenly looking older. "I came back because I need my share of the farm." Clara stopped arranging the breakfast dishes. "Your share? This property is worth millions, Clara. Grant always knew half of it is mine by right, but he refuses to sell or give me my inheritance. This farm is his life, Warren. So what? I have rights too." He stood up, agitated. "That's why I need your help." "My help for what?" "To convince Grant to accept an offer I received. An agribusiness company wants to buy the property. It would pay enough for you two to buy something smaller, and for me to sort out my life." Clara felt a cold anger rise in her chest. "You want me to convince my husband to sell his family's land? I'm offering a way out for everyone. Grant gets enough money to live well, I solve my problems, and you—" He paused strategically. "You're free to accept the Chicago offer." "What? Do you think I don't know you're torn? That you have a letter ready to leave?" Warren smiled coldly. "I saw when you hid it in the book. You went through my things? I merely observed. And I understood that everyone wins. You fulfill your dreams, I sort out my life. Grant starts over without the burden of a wife who doesn't want to be here." The accusation was like a slap. Clara grabbed Warren by the arm. "Get out of my house, now." "Clara, now!" Warren left, but his words left a poisonous taint in the air. Clara trembled with anger and something deeper, the realization that he had verbalized fears she herself carried. When Grant returned that afternoon, he found her too quiet. "Did something happen?" "Warren was here. And? He told me why he came back. He lost money in Ohio. He wants to sell the farm." Grant sighed as if he had been expecting this for a long time. "And what did you say?" "That he was crazy. Is that all?" Clara looked into her husband's eyes, deciding on total honesty. "He said other things. About me. About us. Things that made me think." "What kind of things?" "That you'd be better off without a wife who dreams of leaving." Grant closed his eyes for a moment. "Clara, come here." They sat on the living room couch, where they rarely spent time. Grant held her hands. "Warren has always been like this. When we were children, if he couldn't have something, he would do everything to make sure no one else did." His voice was calm, but firm. "He knows you're the most important thing in my life, that's why he's trying to drive you away. And what if he's right? What if I really shouldn't be here? Clara, look at me." Grant waited until she raised her eyes. "Do you think Warren has a right to this farm?" "I don't know about legal right. I'm not talking legal. I'm talking fairness. He left at 18, never helped, never cared. He only came back when he needed money. Do you think it's fair for him to demand half of something he didn't help build? No. Then why would it be different with you and me? You came, you worked, you built, you cared. This farm is yours now too. Not because you married me, but because you became a part of it. But what if I want to leave? Then you will leave. But by your decision, not by his manipulation." That night, after Grant fell asleep, Clara went to the bookshelf and took out the letter. She reread every word, feeling the weight of each sentence. Then slowly she tore it into small pieces. She wasn't ready to leave, and if she ever was, it would be with honesty, not fleeing like a thief in the dead of night. But first she had a definitive conversation to have with Warren. Warren appeared 3 days later, bringing papers and a confident smile. He found Clara in the garden, pulling weeds with more force than necessary. "I brought the proposal documents," he said, waving a folder. "Even better values than I imagined." Clara stood up, wiping her hands on her skirt. "Warren, you're leaving this farm and you're not coming back." "What do you mean?" "Exactly what I said. This conversation is over." "Clara, you don't understand. This is the chance to—" "The chance for what? For you to destroy the life your brother built because you wasted yours?" Warren laughed, but there was nervousness in the sound. "You're being dramatic. I'm being honest." Clara took a step towards him. "You left when he stayed. This farm is built on his work. And mine too." "Yours?" Warren's tone turned acidic. "You came here with nothing, Clara. Don't talk about rights." "You're right. I came with nothing." She smiled, but there was steel in her voice. But I built something. You just want to destroy. I'm offering prosperity. You're offering destruction disguised as opportunity. Warren changed his strategy, approaching her. What about Chicago? Your dreams? Are you going to give up everything for him? I'm not giving up my dreams. I'm going to fulfill them right here. Here? In this middle of nowhere? In my home. The words came out with a certainty that surprised Clara herself. With my family. You'll regret it. Maybe. But it will be my regret, not a consequence of your greed. Warren put the papers away angrily. Grant has always been stubborn. Now I see you're just the same. Thank you. When Grant arrived for lunch, he found Clara in the kitchen, lighter than she had seemed in weeks. Warren was here. He was. And he left. For good, I hope. What happened? I said no. To everything. To selling the farm, to his manipulations, to the guilt he tried to make me feel. Grant approached slowly. And Chicago? Clara stopped stirring the pot and turned to him. You know what I realized? That I was confusing freedom with escape. I thought I needed to leave to be myself. And now I know I can be myself here. I can have my projects, my dreams, my identity. I don't need to abandon our life for that. Are you sure? Absolutely. She smiled. I'm going to write to Vivian Vance declining the offer, but I'm going to propose a partnership. I can supply pieces from here, work as a freelancer. What if she doesn't accept? Then I'll find other ways. The lady who buys my embroidered items at the fair has contacts in Des Moines, Iowa. I can expand slowly, at my own pace. Grant pulled her into an embrace. I love you, he whispered in her ear. I love you too, and I love our life. Even with the difficulties? Especially with them, because they are our difficulties. That afternoon, when she visited Martha Albright at the hospital, Clara found her much better, sitting in a chair beside the bed. How are you? Well, and you look different. I am. I made some important decisions. About Chicago? About everything. Clara sat on the edge of the bed. You once said I intimidated you because I had strength. I think I finally understood that strength isn't leaving when things get tough. It's staying and building something better. Martha Albright smiled. Wise girl. I learned from you. You learn with your heart, and yours always knew the right way. When she left the hospital, Clara stopped at the stationery store and bought some pretty writing paper. She wrote a polite reply to Vivian Vance, declining the offer but suggesting a partnership. Then she went home, where she found Grant fixing Caleb's toy on the veranda, Hazel asleep in his lap. She sat beside him in silence, observing the lands that stretched to the horizon. Her lands, her family, her life. Finally, she understood. Home wasn't a place to leave from, but a place to always return to, even if you had never left. 6 months later, on a clear spring morning, Clara hung a new towel in the kitchen window. It was hand-embroidered, one of the pieces she made for her growing clientele in Des Moines and the surrounding region. The business prospered slowly, but it prospered. Grant entered with Caleb in his arms and Hazel holding his hand, all returning from the corral where they had seen the new calves. Mommy, there's a little cat outside, announced Hazel, 3 years old now, chatty like her mother. Oh? What color? Black and white. Daddy said it can stay. Clara looked at Grant, who shrugged with a smile. A house needs a cat, he said. A house needs many things, she agreed, running her hand through Caleb's already long hair. Life had found its rhythm. Clara worked a few hours a day sewing, tended the medicinal garden which now supplied products to a small compounding pharmacy, and still helped Grant with farm chores. It wasn't the life she had dreamed of at 20, but it was better. It was a consciously chosen life. Vivian Vance had accepted the partnership. Clara sent pieces monthly to Chicago, maintaining her artistic identity without giving up family stability. The extra money allowed for small improvements to the house, a larger room for the children, a sewing workshop in the old storage shed. Letter from Martha Albright arrived, Grant said, handing her the envelope. Clara read aloud. Dearest, the boarding house reopens next week. I'm well, wiser, and less tough. You taught me that family is also chosen, not just inherited. Kisses to my adopted grandkids. She's better, Grant commented. We all are. It was true. The farm prospered, the children grew up healthy, and they had found the balance between individual dreams and shared life. Warren never appeared again. They heard through others that he had found a job at an agricultural company in Montana. Grant showed neither relief nor resentment, only the peace of someone who had protected what was rightfully his. That afternoon, while the children napped, Clara and Grant walked to the garden. The plants were lush, the earth smelled of promise, and the horizon stretched infinitely under the blue Nebraska sky. Remember when you said sometimes you recognize home when you find it? Clara asked. I remember. I didn't understand it at the time. I thought home was where you were born, or where you go when you're tired of searching. And now? Now I know home is a place you choose to stay. Even when it hurts, even when it's difficult, even when there seem to be easier options. Grant stopped walking and looked at her. You never regret it? Regret what? Choosing you? Our children? This life? Clara smiled. Never. And you know why? Why? Because I learned that courage isn't leaving when things get tough. Courage is planting roots and growing something beautiful right where you are. They walked back to the house hand in hand as the sun began to set, painting the sky orange and pink. On the veranda, the rocking chairs awaited them, as they would await them every afternoon for years to come. Caleb woke first, running into his father's arms. Hazel followed, carrying the new kitten. What should we name him? She asked. How about Hope? Clara suggested. Hope is a girl's name, Caleb protested. And who says Hope has a gender? Grant laughed. Then it's Hope, Hazel decided, with the authority of a 3-year-old. Sitting on the veranda, watching the children play in the yard with the kitten, Grant and Clara knew they had found something rare. Not the perfect life we dream of when young, but the real life we build when we mature. Clara had arrived at that farm lost in a storm, carrying a past that shamed her and fear of the future. Now she knew that storms can destroy, but they can also clear the way for new beginnings. She had chosen to stay. She had chosen to love. She had chosen to plant roots instead of fleeing. And on the warm afternoons in rural Nebraska, with the smell of ever-fresh coffee and the sound of children playing, she knew she had made the right choice. Because sometimes, the greatest act of courage is simply choosing to stay where your heart has found its peace.